Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. All right. Okay, let us. Today, I wanted to. Sorry, I'm not going to teach today, but this is a great teaching that we need to actually start to think about. We always in the West, there's a very uh, difficult to accept life after death, the reincarnation. Okay, in the East, it's actually a very common thing that we all believe, even though we haven't died and we haven't experienced that life after death. As the Buddha said in the Kalama Sutta, we don't just believe. We don't just believe because it is logical. We don't just believe because it is passed down by the tradition. We don't just believe because it's the teacher says so. And all those 10 points, you remember, I kept constantly reminding you folks of. But this life, this consciousness thing, this rebirth of this consciousness thing is actually a very important issue, important teaching in the Buddhist tradition. After this material body died, what goes into the samsara? What goes round? What goes into the deaths and birth cycle? We always say that we want to be rid of Mara. And what Mara is doing is Mara is actually tempting us constantly going round in circles in this samsara, right? These constant cycles of birth and death. So there are cycles of birth and death. So after we die, who is going to be reborn? So in the Buddhist thought is, in the Buddhist philosophy, or what the Buddha thought is the consciousness, the energy of the consciousness will be reborn, will take another form. Whatever form it will take actually depends on, a lot of scholars said depends on three things. First, depends on the last thought. Second thing was depends on the karma of that particular person. And then the third thing was depends on the old habits of that dying person. So three things, okay? The last thought and the karma of that person. So if at the time of death, if the karma of that person, if the unwholesome karma, the seeds of the unwholesome karma surface at that moment, so that person will be overwhelmed by these unwholesome thoughts. And it will likely lead him or her to realms that are connected with these unwholesome thoughts. Okay? And the third is the habits of that dying person. If that person who is at end of life, EOL we call it, end of life, if they have a very strong habit of reacting with anger or animosity, and if at the time of death, if somebody is irritating him or her, or something comes up on the mind that irritates this person or that make him angry, then that old habit will kick in. And that's where it will lead him or her. Okay, so these are the three possibilities that scholars said is possible that lead us to whatever realm that will be connected with these one of these. But it yet to be scientifically proven before people will believe, right? And now in the 21st century, actually more and more of the Buddha's teachings have been proven. They are able to actually prove some of the teachings of the Buddha. And that's why tonight I wanted us to look at a documentary, actually a videotape, talking about near-death experience. And near-death experience is not really dying and then completely gone. But at that moment, that person could be medically certified to be dead with no brain activity and very minimal vital signs. So, but yet they came back to life. And we can see from this video, I wanted you to just watch it, and then we can go for a little bit of discussion tonight, and then we watch another little bit next week, and then we'll go for another little bit of discussion. I don't know what the next video will be like. I haven't watched it yet. But I watched this one just accidentally, really. And I have always believed in NDE. I think if we study the Buddha's teachings deep enough, we would accept this concept. But it's just that our human concept is so strong that it's very difficult to accept something like this out of the box. It's really out of the box, really out of our own conception, and we think the logics in our human mind. I'm so glad that I could actually show this on a video, because I used to read books on this, but I haven't seen a video being put together in such a good way to actually illustrate this whole concept. Anita Mujani, the lady, is actually from Hong Kong. She speaks Chinese. She writes Chinese. She was brought up in Hong Kong, but she's of Indian descent. And she has a lot of videos online to actually share her experience in this experience and what is she doing right now. I have had many friends who have had near-death experience, and one of them is Yang Sifu. Yang Sifu probably had about 3 or 4 near-death experiences, which she shared with me when she was alive. So tonight we're not going to discuss this thing, but next week, if you want to watch this video again, go online to watch it, so, and then jot down the points that you would like to discuss next week. So I would like to discuss something like this about the consciousness from the Buddha's perspective, from the Buddha's teachings. What does it say? And it's really talking about that different consciousness that actually the Buddha said, which was being the mind is being dissected in so much detail. Of course, the 6 consciousness we are very aware of in the meditation world, but in the Mahayana teachings, it talks about the 7th consciousness and also the 8th consciousness, which actually verify what the scientists actually have found. So interesting, huh? You like the video? Whether you're convinced or not doesn't really matter, but you could actually have that kind of experience, that near-death experience in your meditation. Of course, may not be so elaborate as, it could be that elaborate too. You could see a completely different world in a very deep meditative state, which is unseen of and which is unheard of in deep meditation. And you could be connected into the past you, and you could be connected with people who are somewhere far out, far away. It could happen in meditation. And so you could actually verify with your own self-experience in meditation. Of course, it needs to be a very, very strong and deep samadhi before you can actually experience that. Okay? Any quick words from you folks? No? No?
Why do you think the mind can heal the body after it has a near-death experience or an experience of profound purity?
Because because you see, this is a material body, and the material body is totally connected to the mind. And a lot of time, a lot of these illnesses or difficulties as we experience physically actually are connected to that mind. So if the mind actually went through that near-death experience, and you could see from these two people, is they in that state of mind, there was actually really pure bliss and pure peace. At that time, that mindset is completely upside down. And whatever that actually was affecting the body, that part of the mind was affecting the body, is being completely turned around. You could say completely become purified. And so when that part of the mind is completely purified, what you're left with is nothing in this physical, what you're left with, the manifestations of that mental part into that physical part is completely gone.
Thank you.
Okay? Yeah. So it's actually a very, very deep subject. The consciousness is a very deep subject. It needs to, but it needs to be addressed. Especially we as meditators really need to thoroughly understand not the sixth consciousness, but the seventh and eighth. Those two are actually the most important ones. Okay.
So what are the seventh and eighth consciousness? We are familiar with the sixth.
Say that again.
So what are the seventh and the eighth consciousness?
The seventh consciousness we call. I really can't remember the English word for it. The seventh consciousness is just like a worker bee. A worker bee. Taking the messages, taking the things that we like or we don't like from the sixth consciousness, from all these six consciousness, and put it into the storage, into the eighth consciousness. So the eighth consciousness is actually the storage. But as in the video, it says, does it being stored is it in this video? Did he ask? No. In another interview, actually, the anchor actually interviewed Dr. Namo, asked him where did all this information being stored? Was it stored in the brain? He said no. If it's stored in the brain, then when somebody has a near-death experience, that brain activity is completely muted. No brain activity at all. So how can you still have that experience, right? If there is no, if it's being stored in the brain, so it's being stored in the mind, which is some electromagnetic energy. It's not a physical entity.
Yeah, well, the other thing that was interesting to me is, near-death experience, if I understood right, is similar irrespective of where they come from. That's what I.
It's similar to what?
Irrespective of where they come from, where their background is, near-death experience is somewhat.
No, it's completely out of the box.
It's irrespective, right?
Irrespective. Yeah. No connection at all.
No connection. Yeah.
No connection whatsoever with your experience, with this material life experience, this very life experience, no, irrespective. Even time doesn't exist in that. Even time is completely different perspective. And if you read the Mahayana Sutta, the Diamond Sutra, it says that the four forms, the last one is the time form, the time thing. There's no time, really. And the time thing is really human. We human beings give this kind of thing. We call it the time, 12 hours, 24 hours. But in space or in that eighth consciousness, there's no such thing as time. Interesting, huh? So interesting. All right. Okay, it's getting dark. Okay. So we wish all these we still should dedicate our merits to whatever benefits that we gather tonight. Okay. Let us bring our attention back to this body and to this breath. Quietly experiencing this ever-changing phenomenon pertaining to our own existence right here, right now. And from all, and allow this good thought to arise on our mind. For all the benefits that I gather tonight, may I share with all beings, human, non-human, visible, invisible, big or small, far or near. May they be free of enmity. May they be free of miseries. May they start to live in a world with brightness, warmth, and experience compassionate love, peace, and be happy. May we wish more and more people will encounter the words of the Buddha, study them, understand, and practice them to liberate themselves from their own entanglements and be happy and be peaceful. Okay. Good night. Have a good week.